I've seen countless fish rooms get really close to success. They were missing one critical system. Now, I could tell you, but it's simply not possible.
Why not, you stupid?
Audience retention. Howdy everybody, I'm Adam with Old School Aquatics, and welcome back if you're tuning into the How to Build a Fish Room series. Today we are talking about the one system that people completely forget about when they're making their fish room. Now, I'm not talking down to you by any means. In fact, my original fish room at my dad's house with 40 tanks didn't have this system in it either. So I'm actually speaking from experience here. That is absolutely a must. And so without further ado, the system I'm talking about is the automatic water change system. Now, I understand this is the internet, and there's a 100% likelihood that you out there are the world's leading expert in automated water change technology. However, for those of you who are not, let's build a little bit of a foundational set of knowledge here. We're going to talk about what it is, the different styles that exist, why I think it's pivotal that you do it, and how you can do it for free. Let's jump in. What is an automatic water change system? Well, let's take just a step back together. What is a normal water change? So this tank here I'll use as a demo. Let's pretend this one's up and running. It's the only tank I have. The reason we need to do a water change is because the fish are going to the bathroom. It's creating eventually nitrate, and we need to remove some. So all a water change is we're going to take some of the bad water and take it out, and we're going to grab some fresh good water and put it in. That's all a water change is. And you see, we've been doing that for forever in this hobby. That's the way we do it. And the problem is that is not scalable. What that means is if you have one tank, it's manageable. You grab a 5-gallon bucket, you grab a siphon, you do it manually, you take the water outside. By the time your back hurts, you bring it back in, maybe you fill up the tank. If you haven't ruined the whole day, maybe you go spend some time with your family, Bob's your uncle. However, when you have 40 tanks, now it takes 3 hours every time you need to do it. And if you're breeding, you might need to do 2, 3, 4 water changes a week, depending on what you're breeding. And it becomes unmanageable. So when you have so many fish tanks, looking to automation is absolutely critical. And my thought to all of you out there, if you have multiple fish tanks, I'm even talking to those of you out there with 3, 4, 7, 12 tanks sitting in a room somewhere. I know y'all don't have it auto water changed right now, and I really think it's worth considering it. So stick around. I'm going to try to give you a case as to why I think you, specifically you guys out there with 4 tanks on a wall, you should consider auto water changing. It's not that hard. Let's talk about some of the different styles to do it, because it doesn't have to be at this scale. All right, I've researched a bunch of different kinds of auto water change systems when I set up for this, and I've outlined kind of 3 primary styles of auto water change system, plus a bonus 4th one, which is mine, which we'll get to. I want to start out with system number 1. This is that 2010s era water system that you would have seen all sorts of big YouTubers back then using. I know Aquarium Co-op showed a video, DIY Joey had a video, all the big names were talking about it, and this was a very simple auto water change system. Now, this system, I'm going to call this the cold drip auto water change system. So the fundamental is we have water in our house that already has city pressure. We're going to take that tap water and we are going to put an irrigation, like a sprinkler irrigation system solenoid on it that's going to control when it turns on and off. And then we'll use like a little pressure reduction valve, plummet some PVC around our room, and each tank will have a line with a little drip irrigation head on it. Now that way it'll drip, drip, drip a little bit of water in there very slowly, like half a gallon an hour up to about 2.5 gallons per hour, depending on which one you got. The problem here is you only have cold water. What that means is you can't really do a big 50% water change, because if you do, your water that's cold is going to shock all the fish. That's a huge problem. So that takes us kind of to style 2, which is a huge upgrade. Okay, style 2. This is a big upgrade. And this style you've seen everywhere. It's still very common. And in this style, you use a thermostatic mixing valve. What that means is now we take hot water and cold water together from our tap, mix those at whatever temperature you want, and then you can push that to your tanks. Everything else stayed the same. We can still use sediment pre-filters. We can still use chlorine pre-filters. We're still going to kind of, drip it into tanks. Maybe you don't put a drip head on it. Maybe it's a big ball valve, because now it's the temperature you want. So you could open that baby wide open and you could do a big water change if you'd like to. It's kind of the big advantage here. You've seen this everywhere. This is the common way to do it. You've seen this in a bunch of Aquarium Co-op content. You've seen it all over Dean's Fish Room. You've seen a bunch of different YouTubers use this. I mean, it's very hard to find people that aren't doing this system because typically it works very good. However, there is one monster flaw to this system, and that is it's predicated on your city's tap water. I live in Arizona, specifically Chandler, Arizona. My tap water comes out of the tap sometimes at 1250 TDS. My GH can hit 30 sometimes. It's ridiculous. It is unusable tap water for what I would like to keep. Now, if you were a snail breeder, it's probably the perfect thing for you. But for me, I'm looking for Neocaridina water. I want to be right around that 300 TDS with the minerals that I want in it. So for me, I look to some other styles. That brings us to style 3. This is a leap forward in technology. This is called the Reservoir style, or what I'm calling it. You've seen this in Europe, you'll see it in Asia, typically with Caridina shrimp breeders. I've seen it in South America and Australia. You don't typically see this one in the United States as much. It's a little bit more complex, and for those of you that are just using tap water, it may be unnecessary. The version that I like the most, that we'll use just to talk about, to walk through, is actually from Keeping Fish Simple, where he uses a large reservoir, and he pours tap water in there using float valves to make sure it doesn't overflow. And then him or an employee will pour Cecum Safe, which is a powder demineralizer, to make sure that all of those gallons of water are good and they're dechlorinated, and then he can pump it into there and it follows the rest of the normal system with an irrigation controller controlling all these valves. He actually uses a timer, which is very sick, so he can do it manually. So it's an auto water change system, as it changes automatically. However, he can manually pick when he wants to do it. So it's sort of semi-automatic, which is cool. But the limiting factor to this is that there's no system to dial in water parameters, and there's certainly no system that's monitoring what the tank system is at or able to adjust on the fly or automatically to what the tank should be at. So that's where my system comes in. Style 4, my style, which I'm excited to show you here. So my style is the Reservoir style, plus a couple of big steps forward with automation. So specifically, picture the Reservoir style, where offline I have a reservoir of water that I'm going to pump into my system. That has not changed. That is still the same. The big difference is, instead of just throwing in some Cecum Safe, I actually remineralized my water, which means I had to strip all the minerals to begin with. So instead of tap water filling it, I actually fill it with pure RODI water, so reverse osmosis deionized water, to get my TDS to 0, so I have somewhere fresh to start off with. Then I add remineralizer to it. Now, because I'm adding remineralizer and because it's my remineralizer, I can dial in exactly what I want in my water and nothing else. I don't have to deal with arsenic from the city. I don't have to worry with copper in the pipes. I don't have to worry with nitrate, ammonia, some weird thing that your cousin put in the water. I don't need to deal with any of it. I have it filtered and I just add remineralizer. Now, the reason it's automated is I'm using, effectively, let's call it a computer. It's an ESP32, which is a microcontroller that's going to monitor that reservoir for its TDS and temperature, so it can compensate for TDS. And then it's going to mix that remineralizer until it hits the right number. Now, you might ask, Adam, what's the right number? What are you actually shooting for? Glad you asked. And it actually depends what rack you're talking about. You see, I can tell it that I want this whole room to be at 300. And then, with a click of a button, I could tell it, actually, I want it to be at 500. And it's going to change how much it remineralizes to do so. The really trick part of this is that in my sump, I am also measuring my TDS. And so over time, it knows this room should be at 300 TDS, but my reservoir is reading, it's actually at 350 right now. So it won't blindly dump 300 TDS water into the system. It's going to say, hey, system, what are you at? What should it be at? Do a little bit of math and say, well, if it's actually over, instead of dosing 300 TDS water, I'm going to dose, let's say 200 TDS water, or whatever I tell it to using the math inside of that microcontroller. So this is a little bit higher level automation. It takes a little bit more effort, it takes a little bit more money. You have to do some code, you have to run some wires, you have to run some sensors. It is not a simpler system, but it is a more automated one, which to me means all of the world, because I can be on a trip with my family in Uganda and I can do a water change without thinking about it, and it will just do it for me. I don't need to be on my phone telling it what to do. I can be enjoying my life somewhere, and the system knows this room is supposed to be at 300 TDS, and it's gonna go measure it in real time and say, hey, it's actually at 400. Whoa, something's going on. Maybe there's too much food. Maybe there's some plants dying. Maybe there's something that's causing it to be higher. Well, then I don't wanna just bum rush it with more minerals. let's actually decrease the minerals so we can try to stabilize to whatever it should be. So it's sort of an auto-adjusting. On its own, it's going to adjust to the remineralizer, and then it auto-remineralizes, and then it auto-water changes. So I don't have a fun way to call that system yet, but I'll brand it. For now, we'll just call that one Style 4. But I think the important message to all you guys out there is there's 4 big different ways to do it, and in the future there will be 100 new ways, and there's micro changes you can do to every system, so there's really infinite number of combinations here. The important part is that all systems here are automating having to do the simple task of removing some bad water and replacing some good water. We're going to call this one the adaptive style, because I don't know, I made it up. Well, the adaptive style water change system is a big technological upgrade from the offline reservoir style auto water change system. What that means is I took the same fundamental, I'm going to have a big reservoir somewhere, and then I'm going to pump it to all my tanks, and the tanks are going to drain out, right? Same style there, but instead of it being tap water, it's actually going to be filtered RODI water. Now, RODI is just a fancy filter that gets your water ultra pure, but ultra pure water isn't really good for anything. So I need to add the minerals I want back to that water. It's called remineralized. So you'll see that for all sorts of different shrimp use remineralized water, and that is the whole fundamental of all of my water. That means I get to pick exactly what's in my water and then nothing else. I don't have to deal with, city contaminants like arsenic or lead or zinc or whatever's in your water. My water is pure and I add the minerals I want, and that's perfect. So it's a reservoir that is going to auto mix my remineralizer. What that means is that it's going to have a computer for a brain. And specifically, it's a microcontroller. I'm using ESP32s, but let's not get too in the technical part now. I'm actually going to explain all that in the future. In this video, we're just kind of talking very high level. What's the style? So the style is a computer is going to think, and the computer is going to know with my programming that this room needs, let's call it 300 TDS water. And so the computer is going to read the reservoir, and the reservoir is going to say, I'm at 0. The computer is going to have the ability to add salt to it, mix it up, wait a little while for it to dissolve, measure it again, and say, okay, now I'm at 120. And then it's going to add a little bit more, do the same thing over again until it hits 300 TDS water. At which point it'll say, okay, today we're going to water change, so let's go. Pump the water in. The bad water will automatically pump out with how I set up my sump. And Bob's your uncle. I did a water change. But you heard that I called it an adaptable water change system. And nothing we just talked about was adaptable. It's just a computer doing remineralizer. So the reason my system is an adaptable system is I actually monitor the actual fish room. So you may have seen other people do auto remineralized water changes before. That's not brand new, although it is pretty cutting edge. I haven't only seen it a couple times in Asia. But in those Caradini shrimp rooms where they're doing it, it's still effectively dumb, in my opinion. The reason it's not smart is it doesn't know what the actual room is. So although I program it and I tell it, I want the room at 300, it never asks the room, well, what are you? So my system changes that. There's a sensor, there's a TDS sensor measuring the TDS in my sump, and it's going to say, hey, I'm in the room over here, and I'm at 350 TDS. And so then the system's going to say, hey, wait, you're only supposed to be at 300. So instead of just dumbly mixing 300 TDS water together, it's going to know, by doing a little bit of math, to say, well, really, I should only fill 150 TDS. That way, I can try to find that equilibrium so that I hit the 300 that Adam told me to fill. That is why it's adaptable. And so, without me even needing to be here, it's doing auto remineralizing and auto calculating for TDS creep, right, to compensate for TDS rising over time, which happens normally, right? And that itself is perfect for what I'm doing. Now, a little PSA. The reason it's perfect is because my management of my minerals is very precise, and for shrimp, that's very, very helpful. Maybe what you're doing doesn't take that kind of finite control. Maybe your tap water is perfect for what you're doing. So in those cases, especially when you're doing species that don't require it, I would obviously tell you pick what is simpler. This system for me is perfect with my bad tap water and the species that I'm going after. And I was very excited to play with some automation because I'm an engineer, so it's kind of fun for me anyways. But let's now talk to why I think you need it so critically. All right, now for the sales pitch. Why do I think you need an automatic water change system? And I really do think you do. If you have 4 tanks or more, an automatic water change system is a beautiful thing to have. You will love it. And so obviously, this is all about saving time. But more than saving time, it's actually about consistency. You see, life actually gets busy. And right now, you might be a phase in life where you are gung-ho about fish and shrimp and snails and whatever your part of the hobby is. And that's me right now. I am absolutely full bore. Obviously, this is my life. This is what I'm doing. And I know in my past, even when I was managing 40 fish tanks, there's been times when there's other things more important to me, right? Whether that's work or school or a friend or a relationship or anything in life, things come up. And while you have these tanks for possibly the next decade set up, things are going to come up. And an automatic water change system is going to, one, save you all that time. I don't need to tell you about that though. What I need to convince you of is that the consistency is worth more than your time is. You see out there, when I was a kid, I looked at it and I said, well, if I buy this automatic water change system, it's going to cost so much, I could have just had twice of a big fish tank. That's what I did. I actually put in 30 tanks in my room, where I could have afforded probably 15 with an auto water change system. I opted for putting, 32 in there, and I was very happy with the decision for a short period of time. Now, about the 100th time of sitting there for this 2-hour water change to Python all those tanks, I started seeing the benefit. And so I would tell you guys out there, if you're planning on having a system that's going to last a few years, and it's going to be around a little while, and you have a whole bunch of tanks put together, whether that's 4, 30, 70, a million, whatever your number is, I think automation is a great tool, and I think you should find a way to scale it to your needs. If you only have 4 tanks, you might be saying, well, automation is going to cost me all this money. And it will cost some money and time, absolutely, but you're already going to spend so much of your time, that time could be better spent the rest of your life that you have those tanks not doing those water changes. And so, to you, I would say, find a budget way to do it, right? Maybe you can get by with that first style auto water change system, right? Different styles have different pros and cons. And so if you're doing a smaller system, especially if your tap water is perfect, just go with the simplest, cheapest solution. And you could probably do, I'm thinking about the numbers in my head, but a Rainbird system means, you need that Rainbird irrigation valve setup. Let's call that $100. You'll probably need a couple $100 of plumbing materials. I mean, probably for under, $300 or $400, you could auto water change 4 tanks. And so it's really not that much capital of investment to be having an auto water change. And it scales from there pretty quickly, right? Especially dependent on style. So for my system, where I'm managing 158 different tanks, thousands and thousands of gallons of automated water change, I want the flexibility to take this whole room from breeding shrimp to breeding guppies to breeding something else. Like, my level of automation is very high. And so for me, it was worth it because I don't want to sit here and do Python water changes or siphon what, God forbid, we're siphoning water into a bucket. I don't want to do any of that. I just want the computer to think and do it. So hopefully I've convinced you. Absolutely consider it. It is worth it. If you're looking at a fish room today that doesn't have it, I am telling you from the bottom of my heart, unless you're thinking about moving or changing the system in a big way soon, consider the amount of effort it'll be to break it down to add an auto water change system. And I know what I just said sounds ludicrous because I spent so many years at my house without it. I'm telling you, it's absolutely worth it, and there is a way to do it. You could break down the top rack of tanks, move those animals into some sort of other storage for the time being. You can even keep those tanks, right? You can move them, and you could drill a second set and then sell those old tanks that are still good on Facebook Marketplace. You could flip things in and out. You can do a lot of this offline, right? You could drill and plumb all these tanks and then just swap them into place, and you'd pretty much just create your own auto water change system that way. But I definitely think it's worth it for you guys to consider having an auto water change system. All right, I promised that I was going to show you how to do it for free, and I'm a man of my words. But if you're still here, way deep into this video, you are a certified fish nerd. I'd love you to be a part of the family here. Please like, please subscribe. We're going to do stuff like this all the time, and I got a lot of cool stuff to show you. But let's get a little deeper in here how you can do it for free. Now, naturally, this is going to be using a little bit of ROI math, so I just want to talk numbers. How much did my auto water change system itself cost? I spent about $5,000 on just materials for this system. That's a very round number. I haven't really done all the accounting, but $5,000 is a little bit more than its cost, so that's a good number to use. Now, I did also spend some money on labor because I wanted to work with my little brother, so he paid him as a contractor to come help me. I needed help holding some stuff up, and you might too, but 5,000 in supplies is a good round number. Let's use that. Now I need to know, how much would it cost me to pay some kid down the block to come in here and water change all these tanks for me? Now, I want to do, let's just say, a 10 to 20% water change. Let's say I just want to do it once a week, right? And that's pretty bare bones. A lot of us do bigger water changes more frequently. With an automated system, you certainly can. But if I was paying some guy down the street, yeah, I mean, I can't afford more than that. So how much would it cost? Well, this room has 70 20-gallon tanks, and the other room has even more gallons of water to water change. And so I'm just going to estimate I'd have to pay about $100 in labor to have this done. I don't think that's an overestimate. In fact, in the real world, I'd probably have to pay more for that, because in my state, minimum wage is $15 an hour. And I know that if you sat here with a Python, it would take you more than an 8-hour shift to do it, guaranteed. So I think $100 is actually very reasonable for labor. If I had to pay somebody to come in here and do a full water change on every single tank I have, that's a big job. That sucks. And in fact, I would want to do multiple a week. But for this example, let's say I just did it once a week. That's $100 a week. So with that math, you probably already did it. That's 50 weeks to break even. That's under a year, right? We're talking about something that ROIs, right? The return on investment occurs within 1 year. If you're in the stock market, that is unheard of. That is a phenomenal investment. Out there, usually you're looking for a 10% return or 15% return if you're really lucky, right? And so in the fish world, if we can do something that literally pays for itself within a year, you have done it for free. And in fact, it's profitable, right? If all I have to do is own this system longer than a year, and I've made money on my auto water change system. And that is wonderful. So out there, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. It's a whole bunch of content here. I'm doing all sorts of videos explaining the in-depth how the sump works, how the computer system works. All of that's coming up. Today we're just talking about high level, why I think everybody needs it. So I appreciate you guys. Keep on keeping on.